Hi, I'm Karen Hutton, and I am a landscape and travel photographer. I'm also a Fujifilm Professional X photographer. And one of the questions I get asked a lot is why Fujifilm? This is an X Pro 2 and a 16 to 55 lens. And I changed last year to mirrorless and to Fujifilm. So I get the question so much, I thought I would tell the story about how this all happened. So technically, I guess the story starts over 40 years ago when I was shooting film photography, loving black and white, planning to be a professional photographer back in the day, until darkroom chemicals made me really, really sick and I couldn't do it anymore. It was just sad and devastating at the time, but I had to move on. I knew at some point in time that digital would come of age, which it did. And when it did, I jumped and I got the biggest old DSLR that I could and the lenses to go with it, and then I got two of each, and just kept loading them into my pack, and then hauling that pack out to shoot landscape photos. The pack got so heavy, and of course I like to climb on rocks and get out on ledges and go places that don't feel dangerous to me, but are when you lean a certain way and your pack goes to pull you over and you start falling down, then it doesn't feel so safe. So that began to change my photography. It began to make me more cautious, not wanting to go in some of the places that I was accustomed to going to get the shot. And it was just beginning to make my world smaller. Last year, I had a trip to France coming up. And I determined that I was not going to bring my DSLR to France, but instead I was going to finally switch to mirrorless, but which brand? So I tried all the different makes and models that I could get my hands on, not really finding the combination that I was looking for, which had to do with image quality, ease of use, I don't like to menu dive, the way it felt in my hand, the lens combination, the quality of everything. Had a heck of a time finding what I was looking for, till a friend of mine said, "Have you tried Fujifilm?" And I hadn't. And I was like, no, but I'll give it a shot, giving everything else a shot. So I got started with an X-T10 and an X-T1 with an amazing array of lenses that fit what I wanted to shoot, because I knew what I wanted to do with it, and I knew what kind of combinations of lenses and camera bodies and so on and so forth I needed. Fujifilm makes them, they're beautiful, and they are so much smaller and lighter. It's just unbelievable. This is the X Pro 2. I've got my 16 to 55 millimeter lens on it right now, which is kind of my go-to when I'm traveling, which I'm doing right now. I'm in France again. And between the smaller size, the lighter weight, the lower profile when you're out in public, especially when you're traveling. As a woman, I don't really like to attract a lot of attention to myself, especially in cities I'm not familiar with, and I like to shoot at night. So I don't want to be looking like I'm carrying thousands of dollars of gear. I want it to be lower profile, smaller gear. I want to blend in, maybe look like a tourist. And I can do all of those things with Fujifilm. I can fit it into a small bag. I can just look like everybody else and get my job done. I can also take this camera into cathedrals and into buildings and into, darker places without a tripod, maybe where they're not allowed, and shoot at higher ISO and get incredibly good images. I feel like Fujifilm has put photography back in my hands. Between the customized dials, it feeling like my old camera, which was a Minolta SRT 102 back in the day, has that very retro feel, and I don't mind pulling it out anywhere, anytime. So literally it's put it back in my hands, where before I might not have pulled out a big honking camera, if I was somewhere that it felt like it would be horribly conspicuous. But there's also something about the color and the contrasts and the sharpness, the micro contrasts, and of course the low noise at high ISO is amazing. The dynamic range, the way it just handles light, it's different than anything I've ever seen. It makes me think differently. It makes me want to shoot things differently, and it gives me ideas that I never would have considered before. The JPEGs are amazing. I usually shoot RAW and JPEG, and usually have a film simulation on of some kind for the ideas, for the inspiration. So much of my work depends on inspiration, on using my voice and what I want to say and what my purpose in the world as well as in photography is all about, I need a camera that will not only get out of my way and let me do what I do, but help me, give me ideas, work with me on developing a way, a look, a feel, a voice in my work. I've never met a camera like Fujifilm. It does all of that and so much more. So when I went to France last year, I did not take my DSLR. I went cold turkey. I just took my new gear, figured it out as I went along, and the results were amazing. I don't really ever see changing. I'm certainly not going to a great big DSLR again, and I'm in for the ride. I'm so excited to have photography feel the way it does now for me. So that's my story. That's why Fujifilm, and I can't wait to see what I get to create next.